The movie opens with a tragic and disturbing scene during an economic crisis. Jeffrey Desange, a businessman, has suffered a complete mental breakdown after financial troubles. In his psychotic state, he murders his business partners and then his estranged wife at their home. He then kidnaps his two young daughters, 3-year-old Victoria and 1-year-old Lilly, and drives recklessly through a snowstorm into the woods, intending to kill them and then himself. His car crashes off the road deep in the forest, and Jeffrey carries his terrified daughters through the snow until they stumble upon an abandoned cabin that's been empty for decades, hidden deep in the wilderness. Inside the dark, decrepit cabin, Jeffrey prepares to shoot his daughters with a gun to end their lives before taking his own. Little Victoria closes her eyes, not wanting to see what's about to happen. But just as Jeffrey is about to pull the trigger, a dark, supernatural entity suddenly appears and violently attacks him. This ghostly figure drags Jeffrey away and kills him brutally, his body thrown against the wall. The entity then turns its attention to the two little girls, but instead of harming them, it seems to take on a maternal role, keeping them alive in the cabin. The girls can only see a shadowy female figure that they begin calling Mama. This mysterious presence feeds them, shelters them, and protects them from the elements and wild animals, though its methods are strange and unsettling. 5 years pass, and the girls' uncle Lucas, who is Jeffrey's twin brother, has never given up searching for his nieces. Lucas has been funding search parties and investigations, desperate to find Victoria and Lilly, even though everyone else believes they're dead. His girlfriend Annabel, a rock musician who doesn't particularly like children and isn't interested in being a mother, supports him but hopes he'll eventually give up the search so they can move on with their lives. Finally, one of Lucas's search teams discovers the abandoned cabin deep in the forest. Inside, they find the two girls alive, but in a feral, primitive state. Victoria, now 8 years old, and Lilly, now 6, have been living like wild animals for 5 years. They walk on all fours, eat with their hands off the floor, growl and hiss instead of speaking properly, and are completely unsocialized. They're immediately taken to a psychiatric facility for observation and treatment. Dr. Dreyfus, a psychiatrist specializing in child psychology, takes on their case with great interest. He's fascinated by the girls' survival and their psychological state. During therapy sessions, both girls talk about Mama, who took care of them in the cabin, but Dr. Dreyfus initially believes this is just a shared delusion or imaginary friend they created to cope with their abandonment and trauma. Victoria, being older when they were taken, retains some memory of her previous life and begins to slowly readjust to civilization. She starts speaking more, eating normally, and remembering her family. However, Lilly, who was only a baby when they went to the cabin, has no memory of normal life at all. She's much more feral, resistant to treatment, and deeply attached to the invisible Mama she insists is still with them. Lilly often stares at empty corners of the room, talks to someone no one else can see, and exhibits disturbing behavior like crawling on walls and ceilings. Dr. Dreyfus convinces a judge to release the girls into Lucas and Annabel's custody as part of an experimental treatment program, but with conditions. The psychologist arranges for them to live in a specially provided house on the edge of the woods, isolated from others, where he can continue observing and studying them. Lucas is overjoyed to have his nieces back and is determined to help them recover, while Annabel is reluctant and uncomfortable with the sudden responsibility of caring for two traumatized, feral children. She's never wanted to be a mother and feels completely unprepared for this situation. The house itself is large, old, and somewhat creepy, with long hallways and many rooms. From the moment they move in, strange things begin happening. The girls, especially Lilly, continue to interact with their invisible mama. They play games with her, talk to her, and leave food for her. Victoria slowly warms up to Lucas and Annabel, but Lilly remains distant and hostile, especially toward Annabel, viewing her as a threat to Mama. Annabel begins experiencing terrifying supernatural encounters. She sees shadows moving, hears strange sounds, and has nightmares about a dark female figure. Objects move on their own, doors slam shut, and there's a constant feeling of being watched. The entity, Mama, is clearly still with the girls and seems jealous and possessive of them, particularly Lilly, who remains most attached to her. Annabel realizes that something genuinely supernatural is happening, not just psychological trauma from the girls. Dr. Dreyfus, initially skeptical, becomes increasingly convinced that there's something paranormal involved after reviewing footage from cameras installed in the house and conducting more research. He discovers the history of the cabin and begins investigating old records and newspaper archives. He uncovers a tragic story from over a century ago about a woman named Edith Brennan, who was a patient at a psychiatric asylum. Edith had been institutionalized after suffering from severe mental illness and depression. The asylum was brutal and inhumane, as many were in that era. Edith had given birth to a baby while institutionalized, but the nuns who ran the asylum took her infant away from her immediately, planning to give the child up for adoption. Driven mad with grief and desperation, Edith escaped from the asylum, murdered one of the nuns, and fled into the woods with her baby, heading toward the same cabin where Victoria and Lilly would later be found. The historical records reveal that Edith, while running through the forest at night, came to a cliff edge near the cabin. In the darkness and confusion, she fell off the cliff while holding her baby. Edith died from the fall, but her baby became separated from her during the descent, caught in tree branches along the cliff face. Edith's ghost, her spirit twisted by madness, grief, and the violent nature of her death, has been searching the forest for her lost child for over 100 years. When Jeffrey brought Victoria and Lilly to that cabin, Mama's ghost found them and, in her delusional supernatural state, believed these were children she could care for to replace her own lost baby. She kept them alive, but also kept them trapped in a state of dependence on her, never allowing them to truly grow up or leave her. Meanwhile, in the present, Lucas is attacked by Mama one night when he gets too close to discovering the truth. The ghost violently assaults him, leaving him in a coma in the hospital. This leaves Annabel alone to care for the girls, and she must now step up despite her fears and reluctance. Annabel initially wanted nothing to do with motherhood, but circumstances force her to become a protector for Victoria and Lilly. She begins to genuinely care for them, especially Victoria, who is more receptive to her affection. However, Mama's jealousy intensifies, and her attacks become more frequent and violent. The ghost doesn't want anyone else taking care of her children. Dr. Dreyfus continues his investigation and eventually finds Edith's grave and the location where her baby's remains might be, caught in the tree branches on the cliff face where they fell. Dr. Dreyfus believes that if they can reunite Mama's ghost with her actual baby's remains, her spirit will find peace and leave Victoria and Lilly alone. He goes to the cliff location at night to retrieve the remains, but Mama's ghost appears and, seeing him as a threat, murders him brutally before he can complete his task. Annabel discovers what Dr. Dreyfus was trying to do and realizes she must finish what he started. She takes the girls and heads to the cabin and cliff location, hoping to help Mama find peace and save the girls from the possessive ghost. Victoria, who has been readjusting to normal life, wants to stay with Annabel and is beginning to separate from Mama's influence. But Lilly, who has known nothing but Mama's care and has been completely shaped by her, remains fiercely loyal to the ghost and doesn't want to leave her. At the climactic scene on the cliff edge near the cabin, Mama's ghost appears in her full, horrifying form. She's a grotesque, twisted figure with long black hair, a distorted face, and limbs that move in unnatural, disturbing ways. Her body is broken and contorted from her fatal fall so many years ago. Mama wants to take both girls with her, to make them part of her supernatural existence forever. She tries to jump off the cliff with both Victoria and Lilly, intending to kill them so they can be together as ghosts eternally. This is Mama's twisted version of love and protection, keeping them as children forever in death. Annabel fights desperately to save them, physically struggling with the supernatural entity. She manages to pull Victoria away from Mama's grasp, and Victoria chooses to stay with Annabel, finally accepting her as a real parental figure. However, Lilly makes a heartbreaking choice. Having spent her entire conscious life with Mama and having no real memory of normal human existence, Lilly chooses to stay with the ghost. She willingly goes to Mama, wrapping her arms around the spectral figure. In a tragic and beautiful moment, Mama and Lilly transform together into something resembling moths or butterflies, a symbolic representation of their spirits merging. They jump off the cliff together, and instead of falling to their deaths, they float away as ethereal beings, finally at peace. Annabel can only watch helplessly as Lilly disappears with Mama, knowing that she couldn't save her. The ghost of Mama, having finally found acceptance and love from a child who chose her willingly, is able to let go of her centuries of anguish and move on to whatever comes next, taking Lilly with her.